Welcome back. All right, so news of the day video for all you fine people on the internet. Today being April 28th. So most of this news is injury stuff because it's that time of year. The Vancouver Canucks tonight will be starting Spencer Martin. Martin's numbers at the NHL level have been fantastic. I think he's played his way into the conversation for the backup next year. Of course, Demko hurt day to day. May not end up playing the rest of the season for Vancouver. Demko had a very good year as well. So, yeah, Dermott's supposed to return to the lineup tonight as well. JT Miller sounds like he wants to stay in Vancouver, and that since they hired Bruce Boudreau, he's very happy. He talked about wanting to win with his friends. And so it's all great. He's on a very good contract until next summer. And so then the question becomes one of, so if they extend him, how much money is he worth? He's got 97 points this year. He's worth a lot. And then how long of an extension do you give him? So for Alvin and Rutherford, figuring out how much money Miller would get and for how long is going to be the big question, because I think you want to get him signed this summer. You don't want this to lag into next year. You don't want any distractions. So it sounds like they want to keep him around. Alvin already being quoted saying that Miller's not a guy that you sell off or trade. He's a guy you build around. So Miller's having arguably the best season of his career. It's a shame the Canucks aren't going to be in the playoffs for it. But again, I really think the Canucks, if things had gone a little differently earlier in the season, we'd be talking about them in the playoffs. And I think teams in the West are probably grateful the Canucks don't get in. The Canucks are one of those teams that seem to do better when they're an underdog than they do when they're a favorite. No idea what that is. Darnell Nurse not skating yet for the Oilers. They're hopefully returns in time for the playoffs. The Oilers without Nurse on the blue line, it definitely makes a big difference. You want him back against the LA Kings, a Kings team, of course, that's without Doughty. So you want that to be one of your strengths, right? You want to be able to go out there and shut down the Kings. Well, the Kings are going to give Philippe Danault the unenviable task of trying to shut down Connor McDavid in a playoff series. But yeah, so Nurse not skating isn't necessarily a great sign, but this time of year it's all cloak and dagger. No idea. So for the Toronto Maple Leafs, in their season finale, there will be no Marner or Matthews. So Marner, who's close to a 100-point season, will not get there. At least publicly, he sounds okay with it. He understands that, players are going to get rested. It's playoff time, and that being healthy for the playoffs is the most important thing. Of course, for Matthews, he's been dinged up anyways, so he got to the 60-goal mark, and so resting him for that last game is important. And, yeah, that's against Boston, so that game may or may not be of some consequence for the Bruins. I'm thinking it probably won't be, but it might be. Carolina news. The good news first off is Antti Ranta's starting tonight for them, so he's back. Kotkaniemi returns for them as well. He's missed the last, I think it's 5 games that he'd missed for them. But they're resting some guys. So they're resting Svechnikov, they're resting Stahl, they're resting Slavin. My guess is there will be others. Those are just the headliners, because they've wrapped up the division. So once they've wrapped up the division, you can rest guys. So that's good news for the Canes players that are going to get rested. You get a night off. And, again, it's been a really long season. Longest season they've had for 3 years. And just with how compact the schedule's been, totally get resting guys this year. Montreal, with the results last night, they have clinched the best odds of winning the draft lottery. And they need it. So the worst that Montreal's going to draft this year is third. With the change to the draft lottery rules, the worst they can do is third. And so we'll see what they do with that. And of course, for Arizona, the worst they can draft is fourth. My guess is either Arizona or Montreal end up getting the number 1 or number 2 pick. And so one of them probably doesn't end up in the top 2. But, for Montreal, they could definitely use a Shane Wright. This is a team that could use a big-name talent. And out of this year's draft, they're going to get that. So that's important. Winnipeg, picking up a draft pick last year on a entry-level contract this year. Chaz Lucius was signed today. He was a number 19 pick last year. And so, right winger adds another forward to the group. The Winnipeg Jets, no shortage of young forwards in this lineup. And so we'll see where Lucius fits in next year, whether that's maybe he plays in the AHL and then comes up or what happens. So Nashville fans probably have a right to feel a little bit concerned right now. There's not a lot being said about Saros, and at this point it looks like his playoff status, at least to start the playoffs, is unknown. And if they're up against Calgary or they're up against Colorado, whoever they're up against, if they don't have UC Saros, that is going to majorly impact their ability to win a round and to perhaps go on a run. We all remember 2017 and how that felt kind of like unfinished business at the end of it. And so this is a team that now 5 years later might be looking to finish that. And again, getting in is important, right? So for Nashville, the difference between playing Calgary or playing Colorado could potentially be huge. That being said, I don't think Calgary or Colorado will be easy at all for either team, but Nashville wants that number one wild card spot. Looking at the standings today, there are 13 teams currently at 100 points. It could be 14 as of tonight because LA currently has 98 points. So almost half the league with 100 points. And then even more alarming, there's 9 teams currently at 50 wins, and St. Louis is sitting at 49. So we could end up with a third of the league at 50 wins, almost half the league at 100 points. And that's why there's so many fan bases right now that are kind of excited for the playoffs to start, because they look at their record, they look at their team, and they go, we've got a shot at winning the Stanley Cup. So it could be the most intense playoffs we've seen. It could be one of the more fighty playoffs we've seen as well, because these teams are close. And I know that Colorado and Florida are going to be the favorites, but there is an argument to be made for almost any team that makes the playoffs that they have a shot. They have a realistic shot at maybe doing something. Tonight's clinching scenario. There is a clinching scenario for Florida to win the President's Trophy, but I don't think anybody's overly concerned with that. Both Florida and Colorado this week, the way they've played, the players they've had out, I don't think there's great concern over who wins the President's Trophy. But for Tampa Bay, they can clinch third place and a matchup with the Leafs if they win, or they get a point and Buffalo beats Boston in any way, shootout, overtime, or regulation. Or they can just flat out clinch if Buffalo beats Boston in regulation. And while that may sound like something that won't happen, Buffalo's on a bit of a winning streak. I've been pointing out over the last couple of days, a lot of players getting rested. And Boston's not a team that usually worries about where they are in seeding. Previous years, I've been confused at how early or at what times sometimes Boston will start resting guys and making them healthy scratches, getting ready for the playoffs, even when a playoff position could potentially be on the line in terms of where they're going to end up. So we'll see if Tampa Bay gets that third spot. Again, I'm in favor of that because we haven't seen Tampa and Toronto in the playoffs before. That could be a lot of fun. And then we get Boston and Carolina. And those teams do not like each other. That's an enjoyable series on the way as well. So Tampa Bay has a chance to clinch that tonight. One thing with Dallas, and I just want to clarify this, and it does seem like this is the pervasive opinion right now when it comes to Dallas Stars. What chance do they have? So for Dallas, they back into the playoffs. They lost every game of that road trip out west, in Western Canada here. Then they go home and they beat Seattle, but they had a period and a half where they didn't play very well. Then they beat Vegas in the shootout, right? And then last night they lost in overtime against Arizona, a game where they won. They were up 3-0 after 2 periods, and I'm in the same boat of I don't know what they're going to do in the playoffs, but yes, making the playoffs is the key thing, and then it's a brand new clean slate in the playoffs. For Dallas, my key thing is going to be how do they do in game 1. If they come out in game 1 and they win it, if they come out in game 1 and it's an overtime game, and maybe if they still lose, but it's an overtime game and it's really close, then yeah, they've got a chance. But if they don't have a great game 1, we'll see how things go for them. But yeah, Dallas, I'm glad to see they're above the playoff line. That's great. Again, I don't know how long they're going to be in there, but I've got 2 teams that I cheer for that are in the playoffs, and again, I'm not expecting them to be around that long, and I want to be wrong. So there you go. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about any of the items on this board. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.